Hey everybody, how you doing? My name's Charlie, and today I'm going to try something a little different. This is a Prezi I gave a long time ago for a company I used to work for about ventilators. It's when we got the new Parapacks, and I wanted to have it on the internet so that everybody can use it, and maybe they'll get something from it, maybe they won't. Maybe you guys have comments on how I can make the presentation better. Regardless, I'm going to split it up into a couple parts, and we'll take each section by section. It'll be part 1, part 2, and part 3. But let's start it off. This PowerPoint, Prezi rather, is called The Ventilator in You. And I use this picture for a reason. It's because normally we don't breathe like we would on a ventilator, right? Normally we breathe with negative pressure ventilation. And on a ventilator, we're trying to do positive pressure ventilation. It's so black and white different from how we are normally breathing. That's why it's really, really a bad thing when we get put on a ventilator. It's not the best thing to happen to us. And normally when we're on a ventilator, we have some major issues going on. So these are some of the questions that I want to get answered when we go throughout all of this. What are the new ventilators capable of? And in this case, it's the Parapacks. How can we identify respiratory failure? How can we use the ventilator? And how do we troubleshoot this guy? And the troubleshoot was actually a lab, so I might be able to do a video on that, maybe not. But let's answer the first question. What are they capable of? So here's a little front shot view of our Parapack. You can see my hand right here, taking a picture of it. But let's start off with right here. We're able to control tidal volume. Now there are a lot of textbooks that actually have different rates of tidal volumes. Some of the older ones even ranging to the higher 10 and 12 range. But normally to save lung volume and to prevent barotrauma, we go from 6 to 8. And I took those from a range of books, and it was actually passed down from our medical director to keep it at that, and actually start at the lower number. Start at 6 ml per kg, then go up to 8. One thing I'm going to advise you guys right now is don't set your ventilator to like a normal standard. Don't set it to 400 tidal volume, because I want you guys to be breaking out the calculator and using your minds on scene, not just setting it to some random number, 400, which isn't going to be the same for all of your patients. So remember, be sure to start out 6. If you're getting good chest rise, if you're getting good SpO2, getting EtCO2, then leave it. If it's too low and you're not getting adequate tidal volume, you're not getting an adequate chest rise, bump it up. Go to 7, go to 8. Okay? This is I like putting this on because normally we don't think about oxygen. We don't think about FiO2. On these Parapacks, we can only do 50% air mix or 100% air mix. And that's FiO2, fraction of inspired oxygen. Now, that might come into play when we mess with our COPD patients, right? Normally, they have a little bit of a lower threshold for oxygen. But in our cases, normally when we're using a ventilator, especially in a 911 system, and we only have 2 choices, 50 or 100%, more often than not, we're going to put it to 100%. And in fact, that's what our medical director at the time would have liked us to do, especially after we obtain ROSC and we put these on our patients. We're going to be using them at 100% FiO2, because very rarely are we going to be transporting critical patients that have already been set up on a ventilator with this ventilator. This is an ATV ventilator, so it's not a high-end ventilator that has all the bells and whistles, but we do have some other things that we can, sort of mess with and be able to utilize. So far we've covered tidal volume and FiO2. More often than not, keep it on FiO2, or keep it on 100%. The only plus that comes with the 50% air mix is that it works off of oxygen. So it'll actually allow you to use less oxygen. And so it'll go through your tank less quickly. It won't go through your tank as fast. So you have that tank for longer. And that's something to keep into account, especially where the county that I come from, we have hour-long transports. So we might blow through 2 bottles on the way to the hospital. But regardless, you could hook this up to your main tank and you can use 100% FiO2. The next one is frequency. Now, you'll actually notice that if you look over here into the green, it goes up to roughly 40. right? It goes infant, blah, 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 40. But these tidal volumes are so broad in their range and aren't able to be narrowed in to below child standards that we don't use this under anyone less than 12 years of age. It's just a little bit safer that way, and we have a high chance of maybe popping a lung or not setting it up adequately enough when we get ROSC on anybody below 12 years old. So our protocols state, and I actually back this, that anybody under the age of 12, our ventilator not be used on it. And that's just to prevent barotrauma. Because let's say we put it to 25, but we're unable to, or excuse me, 30, but we're unable to hone in on the exact tidal volume. It just gets it a little risky in the end. So it's really not worth it. And it's just better to bag them than to use the ventilator. This whole thing is supposed to be used to get rid of hands. So you got hands off the patient. You don't have to bag. But for patients under 12 years of age, we don't really use it. So we've gone through a couple things so far. Tidal volume, frequency, and FiO2. Those are the three main ones right here that I really want you guys to focus on. The next one is actually really fun, and it's the pressure relief alarm. So the pressure relief alarm, we can actually set, here, let's go back and I'll show you. It's this alarm right here. So normally we want to set it to 30 to 35, nowhere above that, because if those pressures get too high, again, we could cause barotrauma within the lung. So our relief alarm pressure, we can actually set and manipulate. But there are some things I want you to think about when you hear that alarm pressure go off, and what can actually affect this, because what it's measuring is peak inspiration pressure. That's what that alarm pressure is. Whenever you take in a big breath, and the amount of oxygen getting pushed in to your thorax is getting measured. It's measured by a pressure, and it's measured peak inspiration pressure, or PIP. So this is an equation that I actually got from Dr. Jeffrey Guy from listening to his podcast that I really like. Here's the podcast that I got it from. And here's the book that I read up on it about. And it's this amazing equation. And I know, oh my gosh, math, physics is going to be terrible. It's not like that. This is going to be awesome. Let's walk through it really easy. So look here. We got tidal volume. That's going to be over compliance of the chest. So that's like movability of the chest, plus resistance in the airway, times the flow of gas equals the inspiration pressure. And I know that seems a lot right now, but let's break it down and see how each of these can affect peak inspiration pressure. All right, let's check this out. If we increase our tidal volume, say we go from 400 mLs to 500 mLs, what do you think that's going to do to the peak inspiration pressure? Just intuitively, what do you think it might do? It's going to increase your peak inspiration pressure. You're pushing more gas into this tank. It's going to increase the pressure within inside, right? Fairly easy. Now, on the flip side of that, our compliance of our chest. Let's think about what can affect compliance of your chest. What about a circumferential burn on your chest, right? One where you have to do an escherotomy and you have to release pressure within inside there. Or let's say something crazy happened and you gave some young kid an insane amount of fentanyl, and you did the frozen chest syndrome, and you lowered the compliance of their chest, and you're in the middle of RSI, and you're still bagging them. What do you think is going to happen to the peak inspiration pressure? If you lower the compliance of their chest, what's going to happen to their peak inspiration pressure? One that was actually told by Dr. Jeffrey Guy, one way to think about it is, so someone is doing heart surgery on a patient, and the resident wants to look in, but for some reason the inspiration pressure is going off and alarms are firing off, and what happened is the resident was leaning in on the chest, lowering the compliance of the airway, of the thorax. Another way we do that is by this strap boards, by putting people on backboards and strapping them down, although we don't use backboards anymore, but that's one way to look at it. So what will it do? We lower compliance, we increase peak inspiration pressure. Now, What about resistance of the airway? So, resistance in the airway. What are some things we can think about that? Maybe, how about epiglottitis? Epiglottitis is a good one. So you have your windpipe and it gets smaller. How about, asthma? You go into your bronchioles and they get smaller. What happens when you increase the resistance in an airway? You're increasing the resistance. You're going to increase peak inspiration pressure. This is sort of becoming intuitive, right? The whole reason for this equation is to just sort of get these ideas of what can cause increased pressure within inside your thorax. Now, another way we can change things is the flow of gas. The flow of gas can be changed by what? It can be changed by frequency of the breaths going in. The higher the frequency, the faster those breaths have to get in within inside that minute. Another way is heliox. So, if we lubricate the oxygen that's going inside you, it flows a little quicker. Is what's going to happen? Let's go back to the frequency one, because that's a little bit of an easier one to sort of understand. If we increase the frequency, push air in quicker, what's going to happen to the pressure within inside our chest? What's going to happen to that peak inspiration pressure, that PIP? It's going to go up. We just went through 4 easy ways to understand why your peak inspiration pressure valve might be going off. And albeit there's a litany of other ways, let's give you some ideas that aren't going to be on the patient. How about a resistance in the airway one? So if there's a kink in the tube, that's going to be a resistance in the airway. If there's a kink in the tube, can also be a decrease in compliance of the airway. If there's a decrease in the flow of gas, if it becomes disconnected, that's going to be a decrease in inspiration pressure. You're not going to get anything inside your chest. This is a really cool equation to break down and sort of go over ways why that alarm might be going off. So when you guys get the chance, write this equation down and come up with some new ideas on why tidal volume, compliance, resistance of the airway, and the flow of gas can affect peak inspiration pressure. Let's go on. That's enough physics for right now. Let's do some fun stuff. All right. Positive end expiratory pressure. PEEP. Haha, a little joke right here. It's PEEP. But let's think about what PEEP is. All PEEP is just what it says. The positive end expiratory pressure. So we just talked about inspiratory pressure. Let's talk about expiratory pressure. So the pressure that is there whenever you exhale. The reason that pressure is important is because it allows alveoli to stay open. It allows alveoli to become recruited, those alveoli at the end of your bronchi, to be able to utilize oxygen, to keep their surfactant in them, to stay open and stay working. Let's check out these cool videos on how it works. So remember, it can go from 0 to 10 to 15 PEEP, but we don't want to go too far, because what if we put in too much pressure? What's going to happen? Barotrauma. That's right. Barotrauma is going to happen. So there's a range that we go to. Let's check out this video. This is awesome. I think this is a cow. Is either a cow lung, I think. Now let's look at that color. Oh my gosh. All the color's gone. No PEEP. No lung recruitment. Get this ad out of here. Can't get it out. It's okay. Now we're going to add some PEEP. And look, we get a little bit of recruitment. We get a little bit of color change. Look at that. Now we're adding 10 PEEP. You can see stuff start to pop up. The lung is getting more recruited and more recruited. The color's starting to come back. 20 of PEEP. Now that is way too much for us humans. So, but you understand, you can see the major difference in what's happening. I really think that's cool. Look at all that alveolar recruitment. Look at all that lung that's being utilized. Let's look at a cool one. How about this one right here? This one is awesome. This is a rabbit lung.
Give a recording again. This is a different angle.
Let's listen to this guy.
Head on shot, Zeep.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to 15 of PEEP now.
So he's going to increasingly add PEEP throughout it. And you could see all this alveolar recruitment. Look at that. Look at how the lung expands, more of the lungs being utilized. Atelectasis, or the collapsing of alveoli, is being worked against so that all that alveoli can be utilized to move oxygen past that vasculature. That's what it's all about. It's about moving oxygen past that vasculature. Now look at it. 0 PEEP, and everything goes away. Stuff starts to break down again, and stuff's not being utilized. And then he adds PEEP again. So PEEP is very important. And we'll actually go over some of the modalities on when to use a lot of PEEP, when to use less PEEP, on what patients to use PEEP on. But this is something that we can actually work on. We can actually utilize and manipulate on the ventilator. The way we utilize it and manipulate it is at the very end. There's a little knob. You can go 5 PEEP, 10 PEEP, 15 PEEP. Our protocols state that we don't really go above 10 a lot of the time, and especially on our code recesses, because we actually want to get that physiological feeling back with inside after our code recesses. So PEEP, try and keep it at the max of 10. Work with your medical director, do a little bit of research on it. Before I learned more about it, I used to go to 15, and I haven't gotten the chance to go to 15 again. I've been using 10 with pretty good success. But so far, we have answered the question that I wanted to answer at the very beginning, and that was, what are our new ventilators capable of? And these are the Parapacks that are on the streets right now. And when we come back again, we're going to go on how to identify respiratory failure. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to email me at the link below. And I'm waiting for your comments and questions. Thank you guys so very much. And remember, every patient is family.